Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Edward Elgar Publishing. They're an independent publishers of what I've described as top-of-the-range academic legal texts, which are of great benefit not just to the academic world, but also in many cases to the practitioners such as myself. We've reviewed a lot of their titles in the past, and a new one has come to us on insurance, which I found very interesting. The title, it's got a short title, Informed Insurance Choice, and then there's a question mark, so it's a question, informed, so basically, have you been informed? Have you been informed of your insurance choices? And then it's got a subtitle, The Insurer's Pre-Contractual Information Duties in General Consumer Insurance. So you get some idea of the flavour of it. It's a detailed book, and I didn't find it the easiest book in the world to read, but it's a very interesting one, bearing in mind the overlap with a lot of the work I do, certainly in the lower courts, concerning insurance companies. And of course, for much more general consumer purposes, the problems of insurance generally today. We're aware that it's been quite high on the agenda for some time with some of the mis-selling that's gone on, and I'm sure you've all received, as I have, letters from insurance companies from time to time with concerns about what has been happening and the way they've been going about their business. So I think that this book is actually quite an important one which assists us. Now, it's been written by someone called Leander D. Now, I'm not sure how the surname is pronounced. It could be Loacker or Loacker or Loacker. So I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. My apologies in advance for possibly not pronouncing it correctly, but it looks like Loacker. Now, this book, as I say, is part of the ATRIP Intellectual Property series. So there's very much of an overlap with IP as well as insurance law. And it's also available as an ebook and on the Elgaronline Law subject collection. And there's a reference point which I'll show you in the book in a minute. My wife Elizabeth and I talked about this book because it was an interesting one from our point of view, very topical at the moment, but also interesting from the perspective of trying to understand exactly what, frankly, the author is driving at. And I think we got there by clearly understanding that this is looking about the fact that you must be informed about the sort of insurance choices you're going to make, because you have to have insurance. I'm forced to have it as a barrister. You have to have it if you're a driver, for instance. And there are whole ranges of areas where it's a must. Travel is another good area, for instance, house purchase, house cover, and so forth. So it's something that's with us and is going to remain with us. There's always been considered rather sceptically, I think, by quite a large minority of the public about the fact that they're not very over-impressed with insurance agents or anybody else. So perhaps we're getting the balance more right now. Now, we've given it a title for our book review of this book, Informed Consumer Choice of Insurance Cover, The Duty of Insurers. And that's really what the book is looking at. Let's look at the book first of all. It's a hardcover. See that? Nice orange front cover there. There's a spine. Then there are some quotes on the back. Explains who the author is, senior lecturer in Faculty of Law at the University of Zurich. And then you've got details at the back about the online service and so on. If we look at the back of the book, there is an index. And then before that, you've got a great many references, huge amount, which is to be expected. That's very much in the style of the Edward Elgar publications. Further references, initial, primary, and then other references. Again, all at the back. They are, if I just show that, they're the main abbreviated references starting there. Then you get the body copy effectively of text. There's plenty of footnoting going on. If I go to the front of the book, you can see there's the actual title. There's a little memory of point there, which I like to point out. It's very decent of them to mention that, the author and the publishers. There's the information about Elgaronline and how you actually find it. I haven't used that much in the past, but I'm sure it's going to be part of the future for us. The book's structured in various parts. You can see that there, parts 1 and 2, 3 and 4 there, and the subheadings, and then at the back references, and then the index, and then there's a foreword by Malcolm A. Clark, who is talking basically about the author who the senior lecturer, Mr. Loacker. As I say, I'm not quite sure how he pronounces his name. Then there's a preface. Obtaining cover can mean buying a pig in a poke. We'll talk about that in a minute. You see what the problem is, because there is a lot of clear concern. You know, useful abbreviations section. It's linked in with what we've got at the back. There's a lot of abbreviations, and you can see them there. And then you get into the body text itself. There are subheadings. There's no paragraph numbering, but there are a lot of footnotes. And then you can see some of the footnotes take over a bit, as you can see there. The book runs to 350 pages, something like that. But it's an interesting book, and this is what we say about it. Insurance. What would we do without it? But on what basis do we choose the right level of cover at the right price? There's so much choice out there, but how exactly does one choose? Yes, price comparison sites are ubiquitous, but as the author of this book points out, mere price is only one criterion of choice, not necessarily the most important one. What the beleaguered consumer needs is adequate and proper information, hence the title of this new book from Edward Elgar, Informed Insurance Choice. The subtitle too, which is largely self-explanatory, refers to the duty by insurers to supply adequate pre-contractual information in general consumer insurance, a duty that should ideally be supported by force of law, so that consumers know what they owe before any contract is signed. This is the ideal, of course, but many consumers are inclined to wonder if their insurance arrangements really meet their needs in return for the amount of money spent. And even as I record this, there are a number of big rows going on about the levels of the premium here in the UK on things like car insurance for older people. So you can see that this is not something that's going to go away. It's an important subject for many people. Now the author, Leander D Loacker from the University of Zurich, says, quite frankly, that obtaining cover can mean buying a pig in a poke. He starts off with that statement right at the beginning, adding that in mass risk insurance especially, inexperienced customers enter into contracts about which they have only the vaguest notion. The result is an inappropriate choice of cover and probably a lot of money wasted. The partial solution, as the author suggests, is to give the customer all, not some, of the relevant information so that an informed choice can be made up front. And writing in the foreword, Malcolm A. Clark from St John's College, Cambridge, points out that the book looks at the insurer's duties as they stand, or should stand, today. Loacker first examines the way in which the information model is implemented under English contract law, compared with, for example, German law. Obviously, he's based in Zurich, and that would explain the reason partly, I think, for that comparison. Here, the subject is looked at from an economic perspective with reference to the ways in which economic considerations can and do underpin various legal interventions. Numerous policy recommendations are then suggested, together with specific proposals for improvement in current laws, accompanied by detailed discussions on the means by which such proposals might be realised. And the author's suggestions for reform in these and related matters include, for example, implementing or altering incentives to insurance companies to induce them to improve their consumer information model, legislation to enforce cooling off periods and or curtailing aggressive marketing tactics, that includes telephone marketing, one hopes, is also discussed. And that, of course, is a major criticism that we have certainly in England. There is even a suggestion to restrict consumer choice, which in free market economies is hardly likely to happen, in our view. A more positive recommendation is that legislators put themselves in the recipient's position based in the sympathetic yet hard-headed realisation that some consumer groups are more vulnerable than others. Now there's a thought, and in the author's opinion, it appears likely that within the European Union we will be heading further towards a know your customer rule overall, and specifically in the insurance sector. The book is actually a monograph, And judging by the bibliography, which runs to almost 30 pages, and that's at the back, and it's split into a couple of sections, it's as a result of a mind-bendingly huge amount of research that's been conducted. And thank you for that. As such, it makes it an invaluable contribution to the literature on at least one, but not the only one, of the financial service industries which clearly need to put certain reforms in place. And I think what has happened here is that Loacker has started a very substantial debate which is going to continue, I'd have thought, for some years. The publication date is cited as at 2015. Now let's have a quick look at the book again. As I say, 350 odd pages. There's the front, spine, and then the back. It's quite a heavy-ish book, actually. So open it in the middle. About information and its disclosure in general, right in the middle. You get a feel for it. There's obviously the body copy there, and you've got a lot of footnoting. It's easier to read through the whole book. You've also got, as I say, a little bit of paragraph, subparagraph, or subheadings, really. There are references to a number of Acts of Parliament and, of course, case law. But as I said, you can see that there is a substantial amount of footnoting throughout the book, and that leads us really to the references right at the back. I mean, a huge amount of work has been done on this, and I think it's of, I would have thought, great interest to quite a large number of people. It is split into different parts. Part 2, for instance, deals with about information and its disclosure in general. And we are very much in a society today where we're looking at disclosure, what information you give, and basically what you must give in order for people to be able to make some sort of detailed decision about what they're going to be doing if they're offering insurance or whatever it might be. Anyway, I'd very much like to thank Edward Elgar and all the people involved in this book. I think as they're very much of a high style, some of these books, but they do have an appeal excuse me, to the ordinary reader. And therefore it's not just for the academic, but it is, I think, a much wider group of people. I think that this book, for instance, would be a useful book for quite a lot of people involved in the insurance industry to have and to read and to actually inwardly digest. Not literally, of course. Anyway, thank you very much to Leander Loacker and to all the people concerned. It's, I think, a very interesting area of law which will develop. Bye-bye.